Hello and welcome to another episode of the Inspiring Leadership Podcast, brought to you by Pursue Limited, empowering people to flourish across the global education sector by harnessing the power and the potential of coaching. My name is McKie, professional certified coach and director of Pursue, and I'll be your host as we aim to bring you some of the best thinking in education and beyond, gaining insights into inspiring leadership. So let's get straight into today's episode, and I'm delighted to welcome Eddie Mensah. Eddie is the Managing Director of Right to Dream Academy in Ghana. Born and raised in Ghana, he left at 16 to attend, on scholarship, a boarding school in Canada where he earned an IB diploma. A bachelor's degree in economics from Franklin and Marshall College in Pennsylvania followed. Eddie has been in various academic positions for the last 25 years. Most recently, he was a head of school at Charlotte Prep School in North Carolina before taking on his role at Right to Dream. Eddie holds a master's degree in educational leadership from the University of Pennsylvania and certificate in school management and leadership from Harvard University. Eddie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Nick. I'm glad to be here.
Now, Eddie, you're not coming from us from Ghana, are you? You're in America at the moment.
I am currently in America. Yes, it's 6 a.m. here, so I apologize for the raspy voice. I'm not quite awake yet.
Well, thank you so much for getting up early. So just take us through, what are you doing in America at the moment?
So Right to Dream has part of our programs. We have a few of our students who take an educational pathway that sends them to America. So part of the work is to come and strengthen our connections with the schools here. We have a few boarding schools that admit Right to Dream students, student athletes. So periodically I come to see the kids, see how they're getting on, and then some visits with school heads and other school personnel. So it's nice to be back. I used to live in Philadelphia. I lived here for about 17 years. So it's nice to be back with a lot of nostalgia right now.
I've never been to Philadelphia. I lived in Boston for a year, and I used to work with somebody from Philly, but I never actually got down there, so I haven't been there before.
Yeah.
What's it like?
Yeah, we don't like Boston. The irony is that they're very similar cities in my mind, right?
Okay.
Strong working class, really diverse. It gets super cold in the winters, which can put a nice mist over the city. So both cities, I think, are actually quite similar. Very strong, distinct culture, right? So when you hear an accent from Philadelphia, you can identify it in the same way as when you hear an accent from Boston, you can clearly tell. But it's nice. It's nice.
So you've got a really interesting career here, Eddie. So maybe let's take us back to, I suppose, you're from Ghana,
Yes.
and you obviously were brought up until the age of 16 in Ghana. So then maybe take us through what happened. You went from there to, was it Canada?
Yeah. It's I never think of it as interesting until I start to talk about it. I grew up in Ghana. My parents were both teachers. My father passed away when I was 12. And then I went to a boarding school, which is pretty normal. Boarding schools are pretty normal in Ghana. But when I was 16, I won a scholarship to go to something called the United World College. The United World College are international boarding schools that are spread around the world. I think there are about 9 or 10 now. Costa Rica, Venezuela, United States, Canada, the UK. So I went to the one in British Columbia, and I was there for 2 years where I did my international baccalaureate. And when I was done, started to think about university. I also wanted to play football, right? So I had this dream of one day becoming a professional footballer. So I came to university in America, and the football dream started to kind of dip as I realized my quality wasn't quite at the level it should be. But I enjoyed teaching. I really did. And again, the other part of the irony is that my mother was adamant that I should not get into education.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She said, you're not going to make any money. So find something more lucrative to do. But somehow it was in the blood. So I taught for about 5 years. And then I worked in a nonprofit called Stepping Stone. And Stepping Stone was designed to help underserved students in the Philadelphia area, for some of the poorest parts of Philadelphia, to help them gain educational opportunities. So I did that for quite a few years. It was probably the longest serving that I've been in any position. And then after a while, I was interested in getting back to a more traditional Orthodox, brick and mortar school. So I looked around, and for a change of scenery, I went down to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I was the head of middle school there for a while, and then became the head of school. But then Right to Dream came along. So I don't know how much time you have. Right to Dream, in my mind, was a godsend, because I've been thinking about how I'd return to Ghana, right? I've been away for over 25 years, and obviously my family's there, my mother is there, my two brothers are there. And how do I find a way to get back in a way that makes sense, right? Because there's a bit of a reverse culture shock each time I go, and if I want to settle there, and I'm so used to all of the the processes in America, how do I shift back into Ghana? But I also wanted to get back in a meaningful way. So I kind of happened to find out about Right to Dream through one of my former students. And here was an institution that was doing something very similar to what we did at Stepping Stone, helping underserved students who have high potential and talent, who are willing to work hard. But in Ghana, using football as the tool. Well, remember my football dream, right?
So coming around, Eddie.
This is perfect. This is made for me. I can watch football every day. I can bring my educational experience and leadership to bear, and I could be home. I could be an hour away from where my mother lives. So, the conversation with my wife went a little bit like this. So Right to Dream, where we've been visiting? Yeah, they've offered me a job, and I need to think about it. And she rolls her eyes and goes, yeah, you're going. We're definitely going.
It's a done deal.
It's a done deal. So yeah, in 2020, we packed up the family and moved to Ghana, which is where I'm based right now. And it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. It's a highly stressful, highly fulfilling job, but it fills my soul, right? The work that I was doing here in America was wonderful, and I really enjoyed it. But when having the opportunity to be home near my roots has been incredible.
So you mentioned about fulfilling, your soul. So what about your current role, Eddie, does that to you?
Yeah. So I have this theory that if you find the thing that you believe you have been put on this earth for, it will really, you live in a way that's irrespective of circumstances, right? You live content, you still have ups and downs, but if you have that core sense of what you've been put on this earth for. And my personal belief is that I have this really strong affinity for the word justice, right? I feel like the work that I've been doing in education, the work I did at Stepping Stone, is that I'd like for my legacy to reflect that everything I did helped to make the world a little bit more fair. I think it's unfair that not everybody who has the talent and is willing to work hard gets their just rewards. And so the students that I work with are folks that I think, man, the world, the way it's set up, does not give them a fair shake. And if I can do some work to do that, that would really, and I felt like in my own personal life, other people did that for me. Right? I was willing to work hard. I had some talent, and people were able to facilitate my progress through education, through football. And I wouldn't otherwise have that. So being home, and it's a little strange now that I say that, because now when I got back to Philadelphia to a few days ago, I said, "Oh, I'm home." It's like, wait a second. Hey, I've been talking about Ghana as home for such a long time. But I think, a part of it is really that home is, the silly phrase, home is where the heart is, right? And my heart is in both places. But being home in Ghana in particular, where I think the the difference between the haves and the have-nots is so stark, right? And there are, these young people who have immense talent in football. Nick, I'm telling you, the football is incredible, right? And who are willing to work hard, who have these pure hearts and have, such incredible work ethic. And I just not afforded the opportunity. So for me to be just a small part of that process is extremely fulfilling, right? It's still challenging, to be fair. There's no day that's like, it's all roses and rainbows. But just to have that feeling of we are making a dent, right? We're making the world a little bit more fair. I think for me it's the best feeling.
So in terms of Right to Dream itself, Eddie, take us through how it actually works then.
Yeah. So Right to Dream, it works like a school. So the best way I describe it is to think of a typical day for a student. You wake up in the morning, you go to school. You take your maths and your English and your science. You have your lunch and you have some free time in the afternoon. And then you train. You train with your football coach. And you do this every day. And you play matches on weekends. And as you get a little older, you start to travel to go play in big tournaments. You get exposed. And then at some point, you start to make, at least in our current model, you start to make a decision around whether you're going to pursue professional football as a career, or do you want to take what I call the student athlete pathway, which is to find a university or a boarding school where you can still pursue your academic career and play football. So for those who think about pursuing a professional career, at least they have some educational academics in their back pocket, and they venture into Europe at 18, 19 to play. And then the other pathway is to find, like I said, we have a few schools here in America where our students will come and study and go into university and go into their graduate degrees. And still play football, right? The football dream, doesn't die.
It never goes away, Eddie.
It never does. I was 15. I still think, if I just train a couple more summers.
So again, I'm curious in terms of you mentioned that pathway, I suppose, of going in to be a professional player. How many people have gone to do that through Right of Dream?
Oh wow, yeah. So Right to Dream has been around for a little over 20 years, and I think the numbers, I want to say 70 or so professional players.
Wow.
Within the European leagues. Quite a few have played for our national team. So Ghana is going to the World Cup. I just want to put that out there. And our prediction is that there will be probably 4 or 5 of Right to Dream graduates on the team.
Oh, superb, Eddie.
Yeah. So it's we're very proud of that. Yeah.
And in terms of the other way, when people go, I suppose, to take the more academic route, when do they make those decisions?
Yeah. So there are a couple possible options. You could go at 14, 15 into a boarding school at 9th grade. You can wait a little longer. Maybe go as a junior. We have 1 or 2 that will wait and Right to Dream and go to university straight. So we have a boy now in North Carolina who went from Right to Dream straight to university. We have another one that's coming next year. So there are 2 kind of entry points. But you also want, I think the positive around going earlier is that you have, if you go to high school before university, you have a good amount of time to get acclimatized to the culture here before you go play in college. And it gives you a longer runway. But then there's some folks who may maybe not be ready right away, right?
Yeah.
And so they can take their time and then come to university. And I would say 99% of them will play in university, and quite a few will play afterwards. So we have a few players who are playing in Major League Soccer in America. Yeah.
So the whole thing really is framed around that football piece.
Right. But the beautiful thing about America is that, you can really be a student athlete, right?
Yeah.
So you can be, I'm in Philadelphia right now. We have a student at the University of Pennsylvania. So not only is he playing football, he's got an Ivy League education, right? We have one of our boys who graduated from Stanford, played at Stanford for 3 years. He's getting his degree. soon, and he's playing in Major League Soccer. So in my mind, that's the advantage that America has over a few different countries, that you can still get a world-class education while trying to pursue the football.
And in terms of, say you're a young person in Ghana and you want to go through this pathway, how do you go about doing it?
Oh, yeah. So I don't know who's going to hear this podcast, but I really, really, really need to emphasize, we don't charge money. There's been quite a few instances of fraud in Ghana. So what we do is we actually go scour the land. We have a scouting and recruiting department that will go the length and breadth of the country to the most remote parts, and we have trials. So we would look at thousands and thousands of students. We would select them. Then we'll have the next phase of trials, and then the final trials are actually on campus. We bring maybe a small number, 40 kids, to campus and have them live and train and play for a couple of weeks before we make our final selections. But everybody who has the facility has the opportunity to do that. And I think the way we do it is also reflects that sense of justice that I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
So instead of saying, we are in Accra and find your way to us, we come to you, right? We come to where you are, so that transportation barrier is removed. And that allows everybody to get a fair shot on doing that. So it's a wonderful process, but it can also be very painful.
I was going to say the competition must be pretty hot.
Oh, Nick, the most painful time for me is when we let go, right? So we pick 40 students on campus, you get to know them, you get to know their story. And then because of the space limitations, we're only going to take 10 or 15. And to watch, a 12-year-old who thinks he's got a glimpse of his dream, right? And then they have to face disappointment. It's quite painful.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine the competition. If you're going out, bringing people back, and having those games and that whole scouting thing. That's a fantastic opportunity. But there's going to be lots of people who may be a little bit disappointed as well for not making it.
Right. And we do some academic testing as well. So that's part of the process, so that we can identify kids who have really strong academic leanings. But the third leg of the Right to Dream triangular stool is a character and purpose. So, you've heard me talk about how, finding what I think I was put on this earth for allows me to live a more fulfilled life. We try to talk to these kids about that. So our character education program is really strong because that we're talking about it in two parts. One is sort of, what are the behaviors that allow you to be more successful? But then also, how do you develop your identity on a personal level and in a cultural, environmental level, in a community level, that allows you to become, we have assemblies on Mondays, and I always say to the kids, you're more than a footballer, right? Because at 12, that's all they can think about is football, right? Right? You're more than a footballer. So I repeat this mantra for them because part of what we're trying to do is have them see themselves as bigger than one thing, right? A football career is finite, right? And your life is much longer than that. And so what kind of purposeful life are you going to live through football and after football?
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, Eddie, because I'm starting to do some work in professional sports in terms of coaching. And I speak to a lot of rugby players at the moment, actually, who are thinking, who have a chat with you and talk to you about what they're doing after their careers, because they know in one bad tackle at the age of 22, 23, 24, that's it. And it's about what are we going to do to kind of put things in place potentially to plan for the future. So I suppose how do you go about getting that across to kids who are like 12, 13, who their world is football? Right. And they think they're invincible. Right? I'll tell the stories of my injuries. They're like, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen to me. Yeah.
I'll be fine. So I think, the idea is a bit about identity development, right? So that if you think of yourself as you're in a very narrow way where, I'm a teacher and my whole identity is wrapped up in that. I'm a footballer, I'm a rugby player, and your whole identity is wrapped up in that. Then you run the risk then of not knowing what to do with yourself beyond that. Right. But we know that we're much more complex than that as humans, right? And so allowing a process that helps students to discover more about themselves. So what we do on campus, I kind of oversimplified it with the school and football, but there are lots of different things that we do, lots of enrichment programs, lots of things that allow you to explore who you are as an individual from a, inside of you standpoint, but then who are you in the community, right? So part of what Ghanaian culture is really about, I am because you are, we are because I am, right? There's that sort of synergy between the individual and the collective. So if you start to develop an identity that's more complex, then you understand that football is not the only. It may be the most important right now, but it's not the only, and allows you to think in a much more broader way.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really interesting because I was having a look at your website around this and, your manifesto in terms of work with purpose, as you said, it kind of aligns to everything that you said. And one that stood out for me was rock the boat.
That's right.
And I thought that's an interesting one to have in a manifesto.
I love that, right?
It's like,
rock the boat. Well, because I think we're trying to do, we're trying to kind of go against the orthodoxy, right? Because I think if we do the same things as we've been doing all along, and I've been in education for a long time, and I think it's probably one of the most change-averse industries. We are really good in academia about talking about the future and never actually really doing the things that we talk about. Right? We go to these workshops and conferences and talk about them, and then come back and do the same old thing.
Yeah, it's true.
So I think Right to Dream tries to rock the boat to say, when I was growing up in Ghana, you were either a footballer or you were a student. You couldn't do both, right? Well, you could, but nobody allowed you to think in that way, right? Footballers were those who played football. Students were those who did that. So part of how we rock the boat is to do that. In Ghanaian culture, women and girls in sports is not encouraged, right? Nobody's. But we have a girls program where girls can play football and study and go into university and do all those things that part of our culture discourages, right? So we rock the boat in that way. We think about our students who maybe when they end up in this industry of football, that can be very individualistic, right? And very materialistic. And the part of the understanding that we give them is to think beyond that. So we encourage our students to think about community service projects, give back projects, and there are multiple examples of our graduates doing that. That it says to folks, you're not going to look at a Right to Dream graduate in the same way as you would see some of the more traditional stereotypical athletes, right? And part of that is we're rocking the boat a little bit. So it's funny that you picked that one, because when I talk to the students about it, it's kind of a bit of a debate, right? Because rocking the boat is not comfortable. If you take it literally, it's not the most comfortable thing. Where we have parents that say to us when you go to school, don't rock the boat. Do what they tell you to do. So I've had quite a few students who maybe go against the rule or not do exactly what I want them to do, and then say, I'm rocking the boat.
I can imagine, yeah. Brilliant. And in terms of, I suppose, people, you mentioned the Ghana national team, people who have alumni who have been through your programs. Do they come back and feed back into some of the stuff that you do?
Yeah, that's the part that I think is the most wonderful piece of this, right? Is that you have, players, students, graduates who've gone on to big things. And even some who have not gone on to traditionally big things who come back to campus regularly. Our campus is, it's home for them. And so when they come back, it's easy, it's informal. They sit with students, they talk to them about their experiences, and our kids just love that and love that. And then the cycle continues, and then when they graduate, they come back to do that. So it's wonderful. At Christmas, when a lot of the European professionals were home, our campus is flooded with our graduates. In the summer, when the U.S. schools are on break, our campus is flooded with graduates. So it's wonderful to see that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It must be great for the people coming through to see those people coming back in as well.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We have a nice wall on campus that has pictures of our current students and then pictures of graduates, and it's a world map, and you can see where our graduates are around the world, and you'll see, especially our new students, will spend a lot of time just standing there staring. And staring at it. I love it. Right? That's the look. That's the look.
Yeah. So I suppose you've got Ghana sorted, and don't you also work in other countries? So I think I saw around it Denmark and Egypt.
That's right. That's right. So we Right to Dream owns a Superliga team in Denmark,
right?
Which provides another pathway for our top footballers, and it's called FC Northland, and they also have an academy there as well. Right. So there's a nice opportunity for synergy between, a U17 player from Ghana and a U17 player from Denmark. And recently we got a nice investment from a Mansour family in Egypt, who have become part of the Right to Dream family. They're not the majority investors, and part of that vision is to build an academy in Egypt. Right. And so that's in progress. And they will, the academy will begin this fall in September. So we're really excited for that. And then we're looking to see where else the Right to Dream lights could shine.
That's great. I remember many years ago when I was working in Cairo, I went to see, I think it was Ali versus Zamalek, which is a local Cairo derby of football. And it was just mad. I mean, the way
you should have an episode, Nick. I know this is not your area, but an episode on derbies around the world. I feel like somebody should do something about, right? What is it that causes two teams, two fascists in the same city who outsiders can't tell the difference, but in the stadium become the fiercest rivals? It's insane.
It is, yeah. What's the one in Ghana?
It's Hearts and Kotoko. And so Hearts is in Accra and Kotoko is in Kumasi. And I'm a Hearts supporter. And my younger brother is a Kotoko supporter. So if that on the day of that game, I don't know who he is. I don't like him.
Don't recognize him.
I don't recognize him.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Many years ago, actually, I went to Ghana. My mother used to work in Lomé in a school in Lomé, and I went to see her. And I met her in Accra, and then I think we went along to Cape Coast and Elmina and things. Love fantastic coastline, and
Cape Coast is
lovely.
From.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's where my parents are from.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it. And then I came back to Accra, and actually, I've still got it, and I still play it. I've got a djembe, which I got from Accra, and it's
nice.
It's brilliant. And I still play it now with a guy from Senegal. Actually, he has like a drum circle, and I always bring it. It needs reskinning, but I always remember that coming back before the airport, going to this. There's a huge kind of tents around this place, and all these guys were carving these djembes and stuff.
That's right.
Brilliant.
Nick, you just went up in my estimation.
That was many years ago, Eddie. I mean, I'm talking like 15, 20 years ago there. But I also remember, because when you go around these places, you always notice things around people wearing football kits, don't you? Replica kits, all these things. And, it's you can see how much people are into football all over the world, wherever you go.
Right. It's the universal language, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? That I've been to places. When I first moved to North Carolina, I moved to Charlotte, and I didn't know anybody. I went to a park, and there were these South American guys playing, and my broken Spanish, and they were like, "All right, jump in." And within 45 minutes, I had made a whole new set of friends.
Yeah.
Because of football, right? I hardly understood what they were saying. They hardly understood what I was saying in language. But once the ball hit the grass, it was like we were brothers. And so football has that power to do that. Football has the power, I think, it has the power to divide us if we allow it, but it also has the power to unite us. And so I think part of the reason, I'm so delighted to be at Right to Dream is because I'm a fan of the game itself, right? And so I get to do my professional stuff while also just enjoying kids play football. And if we can harness it well as a universe, sports in general, but football in particular, I think we would make a lot more progress.
I suppose in terms of your role, Eddie, where do you see yourself developing that and developing yourself over the next few years?
I was talking to Pippa recently about the idea of teaching, right? And I said some of us are shifting away from the words teaching to more like a guide. To think about if you go to climb Kilimanjaro or climb Everest, you have a Sherpa, right?
Yeah.
And the Sherpa is there because they have a little bit more knowledge than you. But you're a climber, so you also have some knowledge that you bring to the table. And so working in tandem allows you to be able to make more progress than if you work by yourself, right? So I try to think of myself as I'm trying to become more of a Sherpa, in which I facilitate the process using my experience for other leaders to grow. So if I think about philosophically, what we're trying to do at Right to Dream is to produce purpose-minded, strong character, talented student athletes, boys and girls who come and make a difference for themselves and in their communities. How do I help the people that are around me, the staff that are around me, see that vision and help the students get there? So that's a very general answer to your question, but that's so, right? I don't know if it's specific enough, but that's sort of where my thinking is currently, is that in the next 5 years, I want my staff, I want all of the Right to Dream staff that work around me to think of themselves as Sherpas, as coaches, as guides, while they develop themselves, right? Because that's the other part, right? The Sherpa is also climbing the mountain with you. So they are also developing themselves. So how do I become better as a leader so that folks around me can also become better leaders? I think we as much as we talk about leadership, I think we still underestimate the importance of it for progress, for success. And so I'd like to become a better one. Practically speaking, I think I want to see Right to Dream provide more opportunities for students. I want to see less disappointed faces when we pick students. Our Women and Girls program, we're working on a specific strategy right now. I think we have as good as we are, we have a long way to go. And we have good expertise around us to develop a program that's really well designed for women and girls, because I think that's the next wave. I think women's football, as an aside, is the next wave of an industry that will have light shined on it a lot. So I'd like for us to be at the forefront of that. And I'd like for us to see different ways in which we live our manifesto, right? So our manifesto, I like the rock the boat piece, thriving in all areas is one of them, working with purpose. I think of it as it kind of describes what we try to do, but it also describes our aspirations. So how do we do that even more in a practical way? What more opportunities and pathways can we create for our student athletes? Those are the things that are on the horizon for us in the next 5 years.
Yeah, sounds you've got a busy time coming up, Eddie.
I'm sorry?
Sounds all very busy there.
Just a little.
But it's funny, isn't it? Because I would have thought if the way in the US that they're very big on women's soccer over there. It's a big industry, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. But you also know the quality here in America is very high. So if we're trying to have women and girls come and participate in here, we have to have a much stronger preparation for them, right? Our boys, I think, no disrespect to America, but I think our boys' football matches or surpasses the football that's here. And so our boys can come. And I think our girls, especially at the university level, will bring a new dimension to it, and then have the opportunity to get an education that they can apply to their lives beyond football. There's so many other opportunities in football. Even if you decide to stay in the industry, there's so many things you can do aside from playing, right? And so, I think one of the manifesto points, if you see, is to expand the dream, right? And expand the dream is that you go beyond just playing on the game If you want to stay in the game, what other things could you do? And then how do you then become a shining light to your community so that others can have opportunities?
That sounds great, Eddie. What I really like, speaking to you here is you've tapped into that purpose. You've got a background in education, leading schools in America, so you're still doing some work in America. You love your football, so you're actually doing the football. So you're amalgamating lots of things that are important to you, and then you're kind of following it through with a real purpose.
Yeah. And the way you described it, right, sounds wonderful, right? It's like
happened by accident, Eddie.
But it didn't come together like that, right? It's kind of the success map is a little wonky. I think as I was growing up, the pieces were forming, and then eventually they start to come together. But you have to be really intentional and reflective. And the advice I give people is to be patient, but be persistent, and then you start to see it come together. But it's not linear at all. I don't think, at least in my experience. Right? But once you start, you get a clear understanding of it. Then it's easier. It's easier. It's not as complex. So
that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Eddie. It's been an absolute pleasure. How long are you in America for?
Just a couple more days.
Oh, okay.
Just a couple more days, and there are a few people who don't know that I'm here, so please don't tell them.
Okay. Secret's safe for me, Eddie. Don't worry. We never had this conversation. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. If people are wanting to know a little bit more about Right to Dream, where will they find information?
So we're all over social media. So if you go to our website, righttodream.com, then you want to look at our YouTube page is probably the place that I highly recommend for folks, because that's where a lot of the storytelling happens. We have an Instagram page as well, but our official YouTube page is the place to go. And beware, just make sure that the pages you see are verified, particularly on Instagram, because there are lots of folks who are trying to be like us, but they're not us.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? But the official YouTube page, I think you'll get a lot of the storytelling, because part of what we didn't talk about is that the individual stories of our students and our staff that come together to form the Right to Dream is amazing and incredible, and can be really inspiring for people around the world.
That's great. Thank you so much, Eddie. Just before we go, actually, I never asked you, apart from Ghana, which is your football team outside of Ghana?
Oh, Liverpool.
I can live with that, Eddie.
Have you heard them? Have you heard about that team that they're somewhere in England? They're
doing all right as well this season.
They're doing okay. Listen, I can tell you a quick story about that. So, growing up, we didn't have a TV, and our next door neighbor had a TV. And those were, in the late 70s and early 80s, when Liverpool was the only team that was winning everything in England. So every time we went over to watch football, that was the team that was on. I fell in love with John Barnes because I'm left-footed and he's left-footed. I'm black, he's black. So as much as I don't really enjoy admitting that I love a team outside of Ghana, but it kind of, because, I think a lot of what you do in adult life is formed in childhood, right? So these memories of me and my father sitting on the couch at my neighbor's house watching football and having, John Barnes and, Dalglish and Ian Ross and all of them, right? Just kind of went into my blood. And now it's in there. And so I automatically hate Manchester United. Right? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Right? But that's the team I support. But in Ghana, it's Accra House of Folk.
Okay. Yeah. I'll look them up and have a look. Thank you so much again.
I noticed you didn't tell me what team you support.
Oh, right. So I'm a bit like you, Eddie, actually. So I was brought up with Liverpool in the 80s. So, Rush Dalglish, Barnes, Beardsley, John Aldridge, etc. Steve McMahon, Jan Molby, Hanson. We can go on, Bruce Grobbelaar. But my father's from Stoke in the UK, so he's also kind of given me the background to how good and what a massive team Stoke were. So I suppose Stoke City is one of the ones, although they're not doing particularly good at the moment. But that's about being a true supporter? He keeps telling me.
Right.
But I can live in Liverpool because I said when I was growing up, they were the team.
That's right. Yeah. It's been a pleasure, Nick. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. And thank you so much for taking the time, especially early in the morning with you. So very much appreciated.
No problem. All right.
Many thanks to Eddie. And in this series, we are proud to once again be in partnership with Independent School Management Plus, an international school magazine, the leading authority and voice for professionals in independent and international education worldwide. So if you'd like to watch the video of today's podcast, please head over to schoolmanagementplus.com. And if you're interested in partnering with Pursue through our suite of individual, team and school-wide coaching culture awards, please send me an email at hello@pursue.com or visit our website, pursue.com. You can also follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at Nicholas McKie or Pursue. Bye for now and look forward to speaking to you again soon.